Welcome to the Pineapple Perspective with your host. That's me, Troy Hooper. This is always sponsored by Pepper Lunch Restaurants. Thank you, Pepper Lunch. We love supporting you and you supporting us. Hey, look, it might be a little bit of a punchy show. I'll be fully honest. Today is Friday, the day before I head to RLC, Restaurant Leadership Conference in Phoenix, Arizona, at the beautiful JW Desert Ridge, with all of our great friends from Informa and all of our vendor partner friends, all the things we're throwing a hell of a party, and Eric knows because he's coming down to the pickleball event. You're not going to hear this until about 4 or 5 weeks after. But if this gets off the rails, a little punchy, a little goofy, it's Friday at 5 o'clock. We're recording a podcast right before a big conference. So please say hello to my friend and leader of the industry, Eric Knott. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Thanks for having me. And it just to confirm, it's not a cocktail.
Yeah.
It's a bubbly.
That's how this started. He turned on his camera when he came in the room and he had a can in his hand and was sipping. And I'm like, well, it is 5 o'clock, isn't it? And he's like, yep. But by the way, it's bubbly grape soda water or whatever. Sparkling grape. What are you saving your liver? You're trying to keep yourself.
I like going in spurts. You know, we got a huge conference coming up, one of the biggest of the years. And I know that there's not going to be laps of cocktails passed around, so I'm trying to stick to water.
It's pretty much the theme of the show usually, right?
That's right. Except for on the pickleball court, I heard it gets pretty serious.
Well, I put a bar at the pickleball court, so we'll see how that goes. they actually had to call me and say, hey, by the way, you do know we cannot have drinks on the courts. And I was like, I saw water bottles on the courts, and they're like, yeah, but we can't have alcohol open cups. I was like, yeah, that doesn't mean alcohol is not getting on the course, but okay, thank you for the warning. Like,
yeah, they did their job. They did their job.
I mean, look, it's 8 a.m., right? So I did tell them they needed to be ready for bloodies and mimosas because,
100%.
Let's get started. But yeah. All right, Eric, before we get going, let's talk about the first question we ask everybody at the beginning of every show, just to start to get to know you, and then we'll dig into your history and who you are in a minute. But what does hospitality mean to you?
I'm a pretty simple guy. So hospitality to me is making other people feel welcome. And it's that simple. Now, I can go in a lot of different directions with what hospitality is. But to me, it's simply at its core, making people feel welcome. And I always try and use the analogy when you think about hospitality, think about how you invite people into your home. So you may do a little extra cleaning. The wine glasses might be shined up a little bit more. You're going that extra mile to make people feel welcome when they come in, and you want to kind of impress that person a little bit too with your hospitality. As well as at its core, simple enough, you want to make sure that the other person feels very welcome.
I thought you were going to say china and silver, and then I was really going to talk about how old you really are. But you stopped short with glassware, so we'll be good with that. All right. Well, look, it's not a surprise when we talk to restaurant folks that they have a pretty good grasp or idea. But where did you learn that? Like, where did that come from? How did you come to understand what that meant to you and how that manifests itself?
Yeah, so I grew up in upstate New York. One side of the family really heavy on the Irish English side of things, the other side of the family on the Italian side. And, it's like culturally put into me. Even the simplest thing on Sundays, the entire family would come together for dinner. And I mean, 15, 20 people every single Sunday. So I think it for me, it was just organic. I mean, I could remember being 5, 6 years old. And of course, at that time, I wasn't sitting at that table. I was running around probably doing some things I shouldn't have been doing at that age. But as I got a little bit older and older and older, it got to the point where I looked forward to every Sunday. You'd chop it up with your cousins, your aunts, your grandmother, So I think for me, it started very young from a family aspect. And then it transitioned when I was about 9, 10 years old. My grandfather ran a place called the Knights of Columbus, a social club. And I used to go in there and I'd mop the floors and wash dishes. And I think the statute of limitations is up, but I might have been behind the bar, like serving like Pepsis or Cokes or something like that. But
sure.
But that's where it started for me.
I was making 7 and 7s for my dad probably as soon as I could stand up. So
that's right.
We had a bar in our house. So look, hey, you say Knights of Columbus. It's funny. My grandmother was a member and active person in the Moose Club. Same kind
Yeah,
of
same
same
thing.
thing. The
Same
Moose. We
thing.
go down to the Moose.
Yeah, that's right.
All of my every Santa I ever met was some drunk guy from the Moose dressed up in a ratty old uniform. Every year at least until I was 10. So yeah, same life, man. You get look. It's a volunteer thing. Everybody gets put to work.
That's right.
It's almost like a potluck, but everybody's cooking in the club. You do your potluck, but make it there. So
It instilled a lot of like character for the restaurant industry, though. Like, learning all those different disciplines, like I said, whether it was breaking, because they used to do big funerals and weddings. He'd be breaking down chairs and setting it up perfectly, cleaning it down, dishwashing. My grandfather even was, and back then it was a ledger. They do their accounting by hand, So I tell people I learned how to do accounting with a ledger and a pencil. We've come a long way since then.
yeah, for me it was bingo night. Grandma had to go to bingo night, and so that was like my dad's free night. Grandma would take me to bingo night about 4:30 in the afternoon on a Wednesday or whatever it was. Right, my dad could go to the bar because Grandma had the kids. So
That's right.
yeah. All right, Eric. Let's get to know you a little bit. You're a CEO of a emerging, growing brand, Tiki Taco, and you've just left a long stint at PDQ as the COO. Been around for a long time. You're well sought after. You're going to be on stage at RLC. You're on stage at a lot of these conferences. Tell us a little bit about your history. How'd you get in the restaurant industry? Catch us up.
Yeah, so I mean, I told you a little bit of story when I was a kid. That's kind of how it started, and then I needed a job. We weren't a very wealthy family, and so at 15, I started busting tables at Outback, and really just fell in love with it. And to be honest, I was kind of a troubled teenager, so getting that job really kind of changed my life in a way that I loved it so much that I just kept advancing through learning as much as possible, and was a kitchen manager for a while. Then I was a food tech and then a front of house manager. But ultimately, I think the greatest success I had at Outback was I was a managing partner of two different restaurants with them. And then come 2010, one of the founders of Outback wanted to kind of get ahead of the times and start like a fast casual, fast food, but with premium prepared food. So that's when kind of we started PDQ, and I was there since the beginning. I was there about 14 and a half years or so. And Bob Basham, who is one of the founders of Outback, he's an old school mentality. So when I came on board and, I had all this experience with him before, he's like, oh no, you start over. So I opened the second PDQ myself, and then started opening them as a regional for a while until we got big enough to kind of slide into that COO role. So it was a really good opportunity for me to kind of hone in my skills, because as a growing brand, as you wear all these different hats, right? So I got to spend time in marketing. I got to spend time in training and technology and real estate and construction and of course operations. So I think that time there really put me in a position to be successful in this role. So nothing negative to say about the 14 years I spent there. And then I joined here at Tiki last July. Founder-led concept. A couple brothers started it back in 2020. They're in photography, CGI, and a couple of other businesses, but they did a really good job of putting the brand together, very vibrant. And then they got to a point where they needed some experience to come in to try and scale that brand.
Great story. Let's talk about hats for a second. How many different colored Tiki Taco hats do you actually have at this point? You're there 9 months. I don't think I've ever seen you wear the same hat twice.
And it's funny because part of being a partner in the business, like I was saying, that two of my partners, they do this for a living. So every couple months we have new merch drops. So
tons of
you'll
swag.
you'll see me with different stuff on Sunday and Monday, shirts and hats and stuff.
I believe it.
Yeah.
Look, my team is always griping at me that there's not enough pepper lunch swag. Look, pretty conservative over here. They see me wearing all these different shirts. What they don't realize is they're all samples. I just get a lot of apparel companies to send me a sample with my logo on it. And, some of them I can get a couple more of, so no, but, all samples come in Troy's size. That's it. It's funny. All right, let's get into the crux of some hospitality stuff. You're talking about being when you're building a brand as you did through PDQ for many years, and now you're doing it again, you hit the reset button, start over, let's go. It means your hands are in sort of, let's call it every profit center, every revenue center. How do you apply the mindset or bring hospitality to each revenue center? We don't think about the finance department as having, quote, hospitality, or supply chain having hospitality. So how do you reconcile that and bring that to each department?
Yeah, I think it's the buck stops with me. Let's start there. So I have to treat everyone as my guest. And I think that's the most important thing. When I say everyone, I mean, my marketing manager, my director of operations, my chef, my GMs, the team members that are in the restaurant. It has to start with me. So I have to find a way to deliver hospitality to all of those folks. And that just starts there. And then I think at the end of the day, once you start to pivot that culture to where everyone realizes that like their job is to deliver hospitality, even in some of the most difficult situations that you could be put in, whether that's, you're piloting two different vendors for something, there's still a way to be hospitable to that person that you're not going to partner with. And we know this, right, in the restaurant business, that chances are you're probably going to come across that person again at some point in your career. But I think, again, I like to keep things very simple, and something stuck with me since the Outback days, and that is simply, tough on results, easy on people. And I think that, when you start to lead with that mentality, people will start to just automatically gravitate that into their wheelhouse. And so they did a really good job before. I'm not going to say they didn't. They did a really good job before I got here about taking care of their people feeling comfortable, people feeling part of the team, being inclusive, hiring all kinds of different people. So I think they had a really good base at Tiki. And then me coming in, I'm sure, everybody was kind of like, okay, who's this guy and and then when I came in, it's and by the way, it helps, I think, from a credibility standpoint, that you're willing to do what you're asking them to do. Yep. So my first week, I was making tacos. Like, I was back there getting after it. And I'll give you a funny story. So the two ladies that trained me on in the kitchen, they kept calling me Tortuga. Tortuga. Think I didn't know.
You're a turtle.
They think I didn't know Spanish, but I didn't. I waited like 4 weeks until afterward and then let them know. But at the end of the day, it's it's in our kind of like our motto. It's like we take our food very serious, but we don't take ourselves very serious. We like to have fun, and of course there's accountability measure in there. But when you have that, bringing it all back, when you have that type of atmosphere in the restaurants, within the company, it's very easy to bring that hospitality element to every facet of the business. As far as revenue center, just a quick blurb, like, we use a lot of automation with recovering guests, right? I think you also use Ovation. We use Ovation. And, it's just, I constantly monitor the tone of the conversation, right? So there's coaching moments, of course, right? So a new shift supervisor, a new GM, and they might not take the most hospitable. But I think at the end of the day, if you still treat them with great hospitality when you're delivering that information, then they'll jump on board. So,
yeah, I think one of the best tools in that arena is empowerment, right? If we set the tone, set the example, remind them regularly that there's very little they can do to harm our business, we trust them. I trust you. Just be yourself, be a human. What would you want in that moment? The easiest way to take care of conflict resolution is just flip the script. Just put yourself in their shoes in that very moment and say, what would make sense here? It doesn't matter about blame or who did what. What would make sense to make them feel vindicated, better, repaired, so to speak, want to come back? Ultimately, would you want to come back after what it is you offer to solve? And I think if you give people that trust and empowerment, they'll very rarely, disappoint you. But the problem
is, I think they surprise you.
Yeah. They'll always surprise you because I'm going to come up with creative things.
That's
come
right.
up with cool creative stuff. Will Gadara, 2 of the books on the back shelf right here. I keep extras to give out unreasonable hospitality books. Same thing, right? But that, boy, you got to hit that all the time. You got to remind them all the time, guys, it's okay. Here's the issue with like going digital, right? We use Ovation or a platform like a recovery and sentiment reputation platform or something. And it's really easy to fire off it's like people feel the need to respond right this second, and then they fire off a knee-jerk reaction. I think that's where the coachable moments come. Is like, oh, if you just thought about it for 30 seconds,
breathe. It's
yeah,
okay.
yeah. Take a breath, walk away, come back, look at it,
Yeah.
But yeah, you don't have to actually react in that moment. It's reaction that always gets the best of you. But cool stuff, man. Let's go on to the next thing. Let's talk about hiring and people. It's always a challenge. It's only become a bigger challenge. The cost for labor itself by the hour is, skyrocketing. Finding anybody, outloan good people or experienced people, has become really, really difficult. Restaurants are growing. The restaurant industry is growing. So there's just more businesses that need those people. What are you looking for in this building a brand? When you build a brand, founder-led brand from the ground up, and you've already done it with PDQ, what are you looking for from a hospitality perspective, a mindset perspective, when you're interviewing? Everything from the kid for his first dishwasher job. Like, by the way, you and I started as busboys, right? I started Bennigan's, you started Outback. What are you looking for these days in trying to build the right culture for this brand?
It's funny because if you would have asked me that question 5 to 7 years ago, I would have really focused on the hard skills. Like, tell me about what you did. Tell me about your experience. How did you write schedules? How did you do your financials, your inventory, all those things? Over the last 5 or 7, I don't even talk about those things in the interview process. It's like, I want somebody that is outgoing. They are full of life. They are able to have, and this is funny because, like I said, we're a small brand and we're growing. So I've got, 4 openings in the next 6 months. So I was in an interview the other day with a GM for one of them because, like I said, we wear different hats when we're nice and small. And I sat there and talked with this young lady for an hour and a half. And we didn't talk about a single mechanism in the restaurant or schedule or any of this. We just sat there and got to know each other. And what I think is cool about that is I think a lot of people in the industry, they focus so much time on, give me your background, give me your history, what do you know? And come to find out, the last 20 minutes of that conversation, she started talking about the fact that she was reading Unreasonable Hospitality. And she started talking about how she's working on herself and she wished she learned that earlier in her career. And she's, reading books and listening to podcasts and all this. And I just felt like, I was like, oh my God, you have to work here. Like it doesn't even matter. Like, we don't even talk about compensation. I don't care. Like, you have to be part of this organization. So I think to answer your question, it's more of a conversation that I have with them. And I want to have that emotional connection with them before we bring them on the brand. Obviously, we're not going to interview every cashier for an hour and a half, but I want the GMs, when they're starting to hire kitchen and bartenders and cashiers, I want them to feel some type of emotional connection from just having a conversation with somebody when you look at who you're hiring. And I'll tell you what, I'm a knock on wood because it's been 9 months and I think we've only lost like 3 people total. And I think that's also attributed just to back to your first question, is like hospitality and culture. Not only do we compensate very well, but it's a family type feel in the restaurants. Like, everybody's there. You spend a lot more time with people at work sometimes than you do at home. So I think I didn't want to make this about culture, but I think that if you make it about culture, you'll find yourself doing less hiring. And in this world today, it is very, very difficult to find, people, to your point, with regards to market share and how many options they have.
Well, I mean, right along those lines. I mean, it basically, especially in a small brand where you're really close to it early on, as long as you stay with that mindset, the people feel it, on a day-to-day basis. They see it, they feel it, they experience it. And so it helps keep them connected to the brand. My question for you, because you've done this once already, is how do you go from, and how many stores does Tiki have today?
We have, next week we'll have 5.
Okay. So 5 stores, four official stores open and running. You've been working with, and you're doubling in the next several months. But you know what that was like at PDQ and however long that lasted, but how do you make that last? Like, at the end of the day, as the scale gets bigger and there's more humans that you have to touch every day, and you're never going to touch all of them every day at some point, how do you maintain that? What's your thesis on, 5 years from now? PDQ, I think when you left was 69, 70 something.
Yeah, high 60s. Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you get to 60 plus stores and maintain a culture that people stay connected and resilient, and therefore, your turnover is, industry low, so to speak?
And listen, it's just my opinion, and I've always felt this way. I don't know if I've been able to articulate it as well as I'm about to in my past, but I think the most important role in any organization in the restaurant business is the person that's running each individual restaurant. They're more important than your district, your COO, your CEO. It doesn't matter, because if you can find the right person to run each restaurant and you train them correctly and they embody your culture and they have an opportunity to advance their life personally with regards to compensation, and I'll kind of dive in just a second. It's almost like a situation where you don't really have to worry about those restaurants that have those individuals running that restaurant. I know without a doubt that if you or I were running one restaurant, that you wouldn't need anyone to come by. You wouldn't need to check up, and we probably would have industry low turnover. We'd probably have sales sales increases year over year. Our profitability would be through the roof, because it all comes down to that one person. So we just instilled this new comp model for our GM whatever name you're going to use, to where their base salary is basically reset every year based off of their sales. And they have a part of the business as well on a profitability side. So they're getting a percentage of each month's cash flow as a bonus. So we've kind of set it up where, typically everybody's got a different comp model. But what I wanted to really focus on was that I could hire someone, put them into a restaurant. They getting X percent of that every month. So they're technically an equity partner at that point, but then have another component that drove their base to a point where they could make 100, 150, 200,000 running one restaurant if they continued to drive that top line revenue. Because let's be honest, Troy, if you have a restaurant that is doing 40 grand a week one year, and then 50 grand a week the next year, and then 60 grand a week the next year, we're happy. We let them make as much money as they want. And I think it helps with turnover within the team, because the same person there. It helps with the community around them, because I go to this grocery store and this place, I live there. They come into the restaurants, the same face every day. So long story short is, I think it all is in that one position, because no matter how good you or I am, as this thing scales up, I can't be in these restaurants every day like I am now. So that would be the best answer I would come up with as we scale.
Yeah, you sort of hit right on the nail of the thesis behind Monica Rothgary. Monica Rothgary, I got to meet and get to know this year. She's been on the show, got her book back there as well. We're actually going to have her come speak at the Pepper Lunch first franchise conference for Pepper Lunch at the end of this year. And she has I won't say it right, but she has this phrase she uses: your guest experience will never exceed your staff's experience, right? It's impossible. Your guests can never have a better experience than your staff, because your staff's the one delivering it at the end of the day. So whatever you want your guest to feel has to come through that conduit. And so you've just said it very well. I got the other thing you made me think of as an example of this is, and not unlike the Outback proprietorship or the Carrabba's proprietorship, is when you think about, certainly Chick-fil-A is a great example of this system where everybody participates in some way in the success of that business. But something that baffled me 3 or 4 years ago was Texas Roadhouse. Texas Roadhouse comes out of COVID, and the sort of COVID bubble, they did really well with off-premise during COVID. But once COVID off-premise kind of shrunk back to normal, how did this super large format, high dollar, like steak, like high average dollar casual restaurant, how are they putting up double-digit growth numbers year over year for the last 3-4 years? And finally, I saw some articles and some journalists dug into it. I read some case studies. Well, it turns out that they only let any proprietor have one store. and they have to be in and about and completely dedicated in that community, right? They have to be a part of the community. So they're the part of the chamber or the Rotary Club and all those things, right? And you just look at that, you say, this is my baby. And of course you pass all of the brand values and all the things through that, but they just buy in and they have one thing to worry about, this location, this business. And I've always been a proponent. 20 years ago, I started handing out profit sharing. I think the dishwasher should be benefiting from the profitability as much as the executive or anybody else at the end of the day. And, it can be done right and it can be done wrong. If you go to a McDonald's and they hand you one napkin, okay, and they make you beg for a sauce packet, that's probably not profit sharing going right? Let's
get them to buy another drink or put an app on an upsell.
But if you get 2 sauces and 2 napkins, but I'll tell you where they're not doing profit sharing and where they're not empowered is when you get that. There's a whole lot of no give a shit when you get the stack, a handful of stuff I didn't ask for. I got 10 sauces I didn't ask for, and I got a stack of. They're still in my car. I still got a stack of.
I was getting ready to say that's napkins, where all those napkins are right now. Right? In my glove box.
Drawers full of them.
Yeah.
In California, at least they have to ask, and thank God they ask if you want utensils to go now. So I don't need utensils. You're bringing it to my house. I'm good. So. Anyway, all right. Well, let's transition this conversation. It's been very good. Thank you for letting us know a little bit more about how you think about this stuff. Let's transition a little bit to Tiki Taco. We've danced around it. We've touched on it. When and where was this started? These brothers got it, but tell us the story of Tiki Taco and talk about where you're at today and what the growth trajectory looks like.
Yeah. So, the family, I'll say, started up in 2010 and, did really, really well, through COVID. They got very lucky. They had a walk-up window. So they were able to stay open throughout the whole time. DoorDash, Uber, people could come order, et cetera. So came out of COVID, it still did extremely well. Built their second one, November of 22, and then built their third one February of 24. So I guess the concept's real simple. I mean, we make everything from scratch: salsas, homemade carnitas, chicken tinga. But the menu, you can get your traditional street taco, soft taco, or you can get a Southern Cal burrito that we shove curly fries into the burrito. We do some crazy Asian kind of themed stuff. We've got a Thai fried chicken, a Thai chili pork burrito that has 2 medium fried eggs in the burrito. But the food is what I fell in love with first. And so I'd say about 90 to 95%. Obviously, we don't make the French fries and things like that, but about 90% of it's made from scratch. So I think we've got the food nailed. We've got 4 locations today. We've found a niche in this little pop-up market where these large hospitals, they have these cafeterias, and we're getting ready to go into a second, maybe a third one, where we just pop up on Tuesdays. We'll serve 1,000 tacos in 3 hours, and we're out of there.
Out of a truck or out of the cafeteria, the dining, whatever, the dining hall.
That's right.
You take over the flat grill, burger section that's generic, right?
That's right. And that's beautiful.
Fantastic.
It's I don't know, maybe 200 to 300 people every week, and it's doctors, nurses, administrative staff, tech staff, and then patients, and then people who are seeing the patients. So I look for these crazy, and people sometimes probably think I'm crazy, but I look for these opportunities to get out. And it's not about making money. It's really just getting the brand out there. Yeah. So if I can go to KU Med or St. Luke's Hospital, we're getting ready to go into Hy-Vee Arena, which is a massive arena that does what I call secondary stuff. So they don't do your big concerts and stuff, but they do volleyball tournaments, basketball tournaments, cheer competitions.
There
was 1,000 people there last week.
Constant business, right? Yeah. Every weekend, all the time.
Yeah. So for me, those things are more brand building scenarios. Yes, we're going to make money out of them because how successful they are, but that's not the goal. And then we got 2 more under construction right now. We're going into Kansas University's football and basketball stadiums towards the end of the year. So our goal right now is to grow out Kansas City. whether that becomes 10, 15, whatever the number is. And then we'll start making decisions where we want to go from there. And I will tell you, I will fortress as much as possible and go this way instead of hopping from Kansas City to Denver to Dallas, et cetera. But at its core, why I think we're doing so well is that we serve made-in-house food. We have great hospitality, and we have like this coolness about us, whether it's the merch, the design inside the restaurants. And we're a big, since I started in July, we've been a big adopter of technology to help us with that, whether it's, guest sentiment, it could be our customer data platform, it could be how we're going about third-party delivery, all of the different things. And I know this is a technology platform, but ultimately where I'm going is that I think we've got all of our foundation built now. And now we're just going to try and rinse and repeat when we find good enough people to build these new restaurants. And I think that's important too, because I think sometimes people grow too fast. They hire on people probably not as successful because they're trying to fill with warm bodies versus the right people. So anyway, it's all corporations. So we don't have to do anything that we don't want to do. Take our time doing it. But like you said, it'll basically double, almost triple in the first year or so.
Yeah, so I was going to clarify that. So all corporate store today, current growth plan is really to remain corporate and get this foundation built. What are your thoughts on the long term for growth? Stay corporate? Is there a franchise model involved? What are your thoughts?
I think there could be actually a situation where a little mixture of all. I think that there's we have a lot of people interested, but I want to get the core of the business figured out first, and then prove it out in all these different DMAs around Kansas City, whether it be suburban market, downtown, midtown, good area, bad area, high traffic. Really get that established before we get there. But I do think there's a world, fast forward 18 to 24 months from now, where we may have corporate growth, we may have some franchises, and then we may even do some joint ventures with some people. So, I always I have this saying, and of course, like as a doubling, tripling brand in 1 year, my team is like, what about this? And when are we going to do this? And when's that going to open? And my saying is, well, let's worry about today, because without today, there is no tomorrow. And so just kind of recenter back to that hospitality piece. It's like, let's take care of these guests that are coming in. Let's take care of these team members. If you do that right, I promise you, there will be so many openings. You
endless opportunity. Yeah, for sure. Well, man, it's been awesome. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing this stuff with us. It's a more intellectual conversation than we might have this weekend over pickleball and beverages, but I'm just jealous that there's no Tiki Taco available, although I'm in Southern California. No endless opportunity, but if I can get my butt through the Kansas area again, I will definitely check it out, although this time I will not go to the Arrowhead platform and be
look, you
had to wear the red today too, I see.
No, we've got
it is.
49ers up there.
All right. I got a box of helmets over here.
Yeah.
For those of you on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, we're being visual, and I apologize. We're doing this for the YouTube. We're showing our helmets off in the background. So
thanks again, Troy. Appreciate it. It's been a blast.
Glad to have you, my friend.
Yeah. See you this weekend.
Sounds good. Thank you for listening to The Pineapple Perspective. If you loved today's episode, leave a review and a 5-star rating. I look forward to welcoming you back next time.